Now let us continue with the tips for MCQ, multiple choice question. First, use the plausible distractors. The distractor is among the alternative that give you the wrong answer. In a typical MCQ questions, there will be only one correct answer. The rest it will be the distractor. The purpose of the distractor is to mislead the students from choosing the correct answer, especially for the students who do not really know the answers to the questions. You need the distractors in the MCQ for you to confirm that those who really know the actual answer will give the right answer. For those who do not know the actual answer, it is the functions of the distractor to avoid the students choosing the correct answer. Knowing the purpose of the distractor, now you will have to make sure the distractors given are plausible. What does it mean by plausible? It means that it seems like an answer, but it is not. In order to do this, you will need to avoid the distractor which are obviously illogical or impossible. Another way to do this is that you create the alternative or options which are homogeneous in the content or the nature as per the correct answer. You may also learn from your previous experiences, such as using the answers given by the students in the previous open-ended exam in order to provide realistic distractors. Second is about the questions format. Normally, we would like our multiple choice questions to be prepared as a question instead of an incomplete statement. This is a typical direct questions format, and this is the incomplete statement format. If possible, you should go for this. The incomplete statement format will make the questions to be open-ended. The instruction is unclear. The students may not really know what is the expectations from them for that particular question. You would like to minimize the ambiguity of the questions. Make sure the students fully understand the questions before asking them to provide answers to the question. This will help to increase the accuracy of doing this assessment. You may also go for higher level thinkings. There are various ways to do it. For example, the memory plus applications method. This elevates the questions into two levels instead of only one level for the memory-only question. The memory-only questions only ask the students to memorize certain things. The questions is asked and straight answer is expected. But when it comes to the memory plus applications, students not only required to memorize, there will be one additional levels of thinkings. It is only the students go through both levels, then the correct answer shall be selected. This will make the questions more complex and it stimulates the critical thinking and in-depth understandings of the students, which is good, and this should always be the focus of the assessment. You need to know that nowadays the educations have transformed. We would like to pay more emphasis towards higher thinking orders as compared to the lower thinking orders. The main reason here it will be the climates and the technological advancement in the society. With the help of internet, and nowadays we can access internet everywhere. We can access any information we need, anytime, anywhere. It makes no difference between individuals. even though those who have not gone through the higher learning education. The conditions now is obviously different than old days. In old days, when all this internet and information technology is not well established, a lot of things will have to be memorized. Whoever can memorize the relevant informations will be able to function effectively, taking the responsibility of the role or post that he is hired for. But nowadays, the competitions become stiffer. When memorizing is not an issue anymore, the emphasis of the competitions it will also be changed. Now we are looking into the higher level thinkings in the education. With that, you should have to consider transforming the MCQ questions in the memory mode towards memory plus applications mode, requiring the students to consider seeking for answers through several levels of thinkings. This is another example of the memory plus application. Which one of the following best illustrate the law of diminishing returns? In order to solve this question, the students must first know what is the law of diminishing returns. Without knowing what is it, the students cannot answer the question. Knowing what is this, it is still insufficient for the students to get the correct answer. This will require the students to enter the second levels of thinking. Which of this case is relevant based on the definitions of the law of diminishing returns? Memory plus applications is one of the methods. Based on the mechanism, you will see that the questions normally do not give you a direct answer. It gives you some terminology, which require you to first understand the meaning of that terminology, and then to find the alternatives that fix the definitions. You may also use another method, which is the cause and effect relationship. This will assess the ability of the students to interpret the cause and the effect of a situation. Let's say now this question: why does investing money in common market protect against loss of asset during inflation? If you look at the information here, you will see the cause and the effect. The cause now is investing in common stock, and the effect is against loss of asset during inflation. Now the question is asking, what is the reason causing these effects? Or it may be in the mode of justification, such as this, which is used to assess the ability of the students to justify certain things. The example question: why is adequate lighting necessary in a balanced aquarium? Adequate lighting is an action. Balanced aquarium is the desired outcome. Now the question is asking the students to justify the actions in order to achieve the desired outcome. Next, try to keep the options or alternatives in the similar length. You should avoid making the correct answer extra long or too short. That is obviously different from the others, in order to prevent giving hints to the students about the correct answer. My personal observations: nowadays we seldom see this kind of problem. However, as far as I could recall, during my personal schooling times, there was a saying that if you do not know the answer for the question, always go for the longest sentence. The chances of getting it right is higher. And then indeed, during my schooling time, normally the longest statement will be the correct answer. But nowadays, I see a lot of MCQ questions has avoided this problem. All the statements are more or less the same in terms of the length. Sometimes the formats are similar. Classifications and natures are also similar. They present certain levels of similarity, and this makes the students harder to spot the correct answer. Next, balance the placement of the correct answer. You can randomize the correct answers. Try not to make all the correct answers consistent throughout the paper. This will minimize the chances of students spotting for the answer without reading through the questions. Normally, we would like to have the correct answers in the second and the third option. Why is it so? Because we would like the students to have the ability to differentiate the right and the wrong answer. If the correct answers always fall in the first option, once the students know the first option is the correct answer, the students may not go for the second and third options. This reduces the chances of students going through both the correct and the wrong answer and making the right decision. Anyway, this doesn't restrict you to put the correct answers in the first option. You will need to randomize the correct answers. That can happen in any of the options. Next, your questions need to be grammatically correct. Use simple, precise, unambiguous wordings. Avoid using complicated vocabulary, as your purpose now is to assess the understanding of the students. You don't want the complicated vocabulary confuse the students, misleading the students, put on too much pressure to the students, or making the students to guess the meaning of the vocabulary, and as a result, influence the performance of the students, which leads to inaccurate assessment to the students. It was said that the students are more likely to select the correct answers by finding the grammatically correct options. This is especially when you are setting the MCQ questions together with the answers, and then you create the distractor, which you overlook the grammatical errors because the distractor is coming from you, while the correct answers typically come from the notes or references where the grammatical errors has already been corrected. That's why if the students identify grammatical errors in the MCQs, there are chances that the correct answer it would be the options which is grammatically correct. Now, answer the questions correctly does not fully reflect that students really know the answer, probably because the students know how the MCQ questions is constructed. Next, avoid clues to the correct answers. You will need to avoid that. You don't want the students to spot the correct answers without actually knowing the answers. Avoid answering one question in the test by giving the answer somewhere else in the test. Once a while this happened, as far as I could recall during my schooling time. Probably my teacher did not notice that, but as a students, we are quite happy to see that, as it will be the bonus to the students. If possible, you will have to have the test reviewed by somebody else in order to find the mistakes, clues, grammar, punctuations problem before you conduct the exam to the students. A typical university will have this in place. Somebody shall be called to vet your papers, see if there is any mistakes, and so on so far. Next, avoid the extremes. The extremes include never, always, only. You only use the extreme when you are very confident about it, because this extreme really push the informations or the situations towards one extreme. For example, the word never. If you use the word never, that means there have never been one single successful case in the past. If there was one single case, then this never will be invalid. If you are not confident about this, just avoid the extreme. Also avoid nonsense words and unreasonable statements. I don't see the purpose and the functions of having those in your MCQ question. Next, avoid negative questions. We discussed about this in our previous videos. First, normally we ask the questions in the positive mode. It will be in our first impressions to the question in the mode of positive. But if you have negatives in your sentence, you will need to make sure that the students cannot overlook that. What you can do, you can purposely highlight the negatives. This is to be fair to the students. And then use only one correct option. This will be less arguable. We mentioned that the correct answer can sometimes be the best alternatives out of the list of the alternatives given. But if you really want to use this mode, you will have to make sure that the best option here is clearly the best option. This will minimize the argument about the correct answer. Also, the alternative should be mutually exclusive and not overlapping. This is also to prevent the arguments about the correct answers. Next, use only a single, clearly defined problem and include the main idea in the question. What does it mean? We want the students to really know the problem, even though without reading through the response option. The message needs to be effectively delivered to the students before they test for the correct options. The problem needs to be clearly defined, or the main idea should be effectively delivered. Students must be clear what they should do and what kind of answer that they are looking for by reading through your question. 11. Avoid all the above options. And 12. Avoid none of the above options. Why should you avoid all the above options? You can take this as an example. You have a question here and you have alternatives here. Typically, an MCQ question will have only one correct answer. In the case that the students are not confident about the final answer, especially whether the B is correct or not, but the students know the A and C is correct. Now the students only need to recognize two correct options to get this question right. Obviously, the answer shouldn't be A and shouldn't be B. When the question has only one correct answer, and A is correct and C is correct, it is logical for the students to guess the B would be correct as well. Eventually, all of the above will be selected and the students get the questions right without knowing whether B is correct or not. This will affect the accuracy of your measurements regarding the levels of understandings of the students. How about this example here? One of the options is all the above. If the students know A and B is incorrect, that means all the above will not be the correct answer as well. Automatically, the C will be the answer, even though the students do not know the C is the correct answer. That is what it means by students only need to recognize 2 correct options in order to get the answers correct. In this case, it may seem to be having 4 alternatives here. Ultimately, the chances or the probability of the students getting the right answer, it will be equivalent to only 3 alternatives. This defeats the purpose of having 4 alternatives in the MCQ. Now, why do you need to avoid none of the above? What if A, B, and C all are incorrect? There is no correct answer. Then you know that the solutions, it will be none of the above. You do not have problems for the students spotting the questions, as students will need to know all the options are incorrect. But now the problem, it will be the students will never know which is the correct answer. This again defeats the purpose of education. Remember, I always said the final examinations, it will be the last chance that you can provide lectures or guide to the students. It should serve as an exclusive summary to the students. After going through the final exam, students get the things that learned from that particular course sorted out. And this is the purpose of the education. Now, if you leave any item that students will never know the correct answer, this is not in line with the purpose of the education. Lastly, do not use MCQ when other item type are more appropriate. This has to come back to the fundamentals of using MCQ. Remember, we talk about different types of exam questions. In fact, different types of exam questions have their own purposes. Because of their unique characteristic, their functions and their purposes differ slightly. Now, why do you need to use MCQ? Normally, when you want to use MCQ, you would like to access more topic under a paper, especially when the durations of the exam papers is insufficient. MCQ looks towards a broader scopes so that you can quickly acquire more data for use to determine the levels or understandings of the students. Conversely, the essay questions pay more focus on certain important topics. Due to the limited durations given in the exam, it is nearly impossible for an essay question to cover all the topics in the course. There are advantages and disadvantages. When you use the essay question, it is easier to access towards higher thinking orders as compared to MCQ. It doesn't mean that MCQ cannot go for higher thinking orders, but there are always limitations. What is undeniable? MCQ has limited distractors, which to some extent limits the creativities of the students in providing solutions to the question. MCQ by nature is not open-ended. It is only when MCQ is necessary, then you go for MCQ. When you find some other ways of doing assessment is more effective, you should go for that. In my personal case, engineering programs are looking into the problem-solving skills, in-depth understanding, and higher levels of thinking orders. My personal institutions have decided that all the courses offered under the engineering program will have no MCQ. We can have structure questions or essay questions. They are open-ended in nature, and we have requirements in terms of the levels of difficulty as well as the complexity of the problems. Normally, we would like to have questions assessing towards C5 and C6, and we would like to have our problems in the mode of complex engineering problem. When it comes to the complex engineering problems, we have clear definitions in terms of the attributes of the complex engineering problems. Because of this, it will be quite difficult to be achieved through MCQ. That's why my institution here decided that none of the courses offered under the engineering program will have MCQ.